In the pre-dawn murk of the Ypres salient, where the Belgian clay clings like a jealous lover, Private Tommy Atkins stirs in his funk hole, a dugout burrowed into the trench wall like a fox's hasty den, its sandbag arch sagging under night's damp weight. The air hangs thick, a stew of wet wool, unwashed bodies, and the faint, acrid tang of cordite lingering from yesterday's spiteful barrage, seeping through the duckboard floor where water pools ankle deep, black as ink and cold as regret. Tommy's greatcoat, caked in the salient's infamous mud, a blue-gray slurry that sucks boots like quicksand, wraps him cocoon-like, heavy as the atlas of unspoken fears, shared with four mates in this cramped bay, scarce 6 feet by 8, walls shored by splintered props that creak like old bones under the earth's indifferent press. 2198B7 snores rasp from Bert, the wiry cockney to his left, dreaming perhaps of Whitechapel pies. Young Ginger, barely 18 from the mills, curls fetal against the chill, his gas mask a squat, goggled horror of treated flannel and mica eyepieces dangling from a nail like a hanged goblin's head, ready for the chlorine ghosts that haunt these lines. The rotation's fourth dawn here in the front line, a 4-day grind before relief shuffles them back to support trenches for a breath of false respite. But time blurs in the perpetual twilight of sandbag shadows and flickering candle stubs. 6 FBBD4 Tommy's eyes flutter open to the gloom, joints protesting the night's immobility, trench foot's early twinge, a numb itch in toes swollen from sodden socks, whispering warnings of gangrene's black kiss if the issue sergeant's delousing powder runs dry. No reveille bugle pierces here, it's the sergeant's gravelly murmur that stirs the platoon, past hand to fist like contraband fags. Stand to, lads, stand to in 5. Hearts quick and subtle, a flutter beneath the khaki, for dawn's the witching hour when Fritz might creep from his wire, bayonets thirsty for a dawn patrol, the salient's fog a veil for such shadows. Tommy fumbles for his boots, puttees unraveling like forgotten promises, laces slick with slime, while outside, the trench stirs a symphony of coughs, curses muffled, and the slosh of feet on duckboards that bridge the sump holes, those watery graves where rats breed bold, their pink tails whipping the surface like fishing lines. Post-Soms meat grinder, these frontline stints feel heavier, the 11th's ranks thinned by July's folly, 30,000 gone in a day, mates vaporized in the wire, but the routine endures. A numbing rhythm against madness edge. D911C5 Tommy's shoulders as Lee Enfield, bolts slick with blued oil against rust's creep, and crawls the short traverse to the fire step, the dugout's low lintel scraping scalp, emerging into the parapet's gray embrace where mist rolls low, cloaking no man's land in merciful blur. The salient's curve bites here, German lines of phantom 100 yards off, barbed concertina coiling like dragon's spine twixt craters pocked with last week's dead. Breathe with him now, listener, feel the fog's cool kiss on cheek, the greatcoat's weight a grounding shroud, easing thoughts toward the stanta's solemn hush. But as the sergeant's whisper cuts the dark like a bayonet's edge, the rifles rise, and the line awakens to watch the dawn unfold. Rifles at the ready. The fire step, a precarious ledge of splintered plank atop the parapet, claims Tommy now, his body folding into the traverse's angle where sandbags bulge like weary sentinels, pebble dash of shrapnel scars glinting faint in the creeping light. Bayonet fixed with a metallic snick, its 17-inch blade a cold comfort, HDFD4 East Lancashire's pride. He cradles the Lee Enfield across knees, stock scarred from bayonet drills, foresight aligned on the wire's tangle where dew beads silver like false jewels. The platoon mans the line in ragged silhouette, 20 souls from a company stretched along this sector of the salient's bloody arc, rifles oiled nightly against the damp's corrosion, for a seized bolt mid-raid spells the grave. 87C9C5 stand to grips from 0400 to 0500. This dawn vigil etched in every Tommy's bone, a ritual born of Passchendaele's lessons, when dawn raids slithered from the mist, Fritz's stormtroopers and Feldgrau ghosts, grenades arcing like malevolent stars. F2FCDD no birdsong. Grace's Ypres, instead, the eerie hush amplifies the small horrors. A rat skitter across duckboards, bold as a staff officer. The drip from a leaking tin hat hung as improvised gutter. Distant coughs rippling the line like wind through barley. Tommy peers through the fog, periscope, a trench periscope. Mirrors angled in a wooden tube lifting cautious to scan no man's land's desolation. Craters yawning like spent shells, barbed wire festooned with rags of uniform. The stumps of blasted trees clawing skyward, relics of pre-war orchards now charnel ground. Mind wanders in the wait, to Mum's letters tucked in paybook. Mind the lice, love, and right, or the Lancashire mills hum, worlds away from this static war's grind, where 90% of days bleed into monotony. Shells the punctuation to boredom's prose. C314 EB Sergeant Ellis, mustache bristling like wire, pads the parapet, murmuring eyes sharp. Lads, no dozing for Jerry's peep show, his Webley revolver a dark promise at hip. Whispers pass, bird jokes of homebrewed char waiting post stand to. Ginger frets of flares pop might silhouette them for snipers' crosshairs, those Prussian eyes in camouflaged loopholes. The mist thins reluctant, painting the east in bruised peach. The all-clears sigh rippling soft, no raid this morn. Just the wind's moan carrying faint German snatches, Heimat perhaps, a shared ache across the void. Relief washes subtle, rifles lowered but not slung, the line exhaling as one, fog yielding to a sun that promises no warmth, only to bake the mud to cracking crust. Tommy rubs numbed fingers, the Enfields wood warming slow. Hearts flutter ebbing to the trench's baseline thrum. Feel it settle in you too, listener, the mists retreat a gentle unraveling, rifles wait a meditative anchor, drawing eyelids toward that first, scalding sip of tea. With the all-clear's quiet grace, hunger stirs like an old friend. Breakfast brews in the gray light, calling the platoon from vigil's edge. The char wallah's call. The all-clear's sigh ripples through the line like a shared exhale, rifles slung loose over shoulders now, the parapet's edge relinquishing its grip as the platoon shuffles back from the fire step, boots sloshing a staccato on duckboards slick with night's condensation. Tommy descends the traverse, a zigzagging baffle of sandbag walls to foil enfilade fire into the relative sanctuary of the bay, where the dugout's funk hole beckons with its promise of low-ceilinged reprieve, though the air within grows thicker, laced with the first wisps of char smoke curling from the platoon cooker's brazier. Reveille comes not with bugle's brazen blast too risky in Fritz's earshot, but the char wallah's gravelly hail, old Davies from the quartermaster's stores, his Dixie cans clanking like chained spirits as he ladles the brew, tea, stewed black and scalding, laced with a whisper of rum if the major's eye wanders, doled from the daily issue to chase the dawn's chill from bones chilled deeper than Flanders fog. The platoon clusters round the flickering flame, a tin of sand and coke, shielded by corrugated iron to starve the telltale glow, hands cupped round enamel mugs chipped from French estaminets, steam rising in veils that blur mustaches and merge faces into a brotherhood of frostbitten cheeks. Breakfast unfurls meager, bullied beef from Frey Bento's tins, pried open with the bayonet's reluctant edge, its corn slabs greasy and pink, portioned cold unless a lucky soul tends the Dixie for a fry-up hash, hard biscuits army dog or hardtack, baked dense as shipwrecked timber, teeth cracking without the char's softening dunk, a smear of plum jam if the wagon dodged last night's strafe. Its sticky sweetness a rare postcard from Blighty's orchards. Rations tally scarce 2,000 calories for the day's toll, designed for the march but strained by the static war's endless wait. Post-SOM's voracious maw, supplies lag, the July push devouring 1,000,000 rounds and a generation's larders, leaving Tommies to trade fags for a bully tin or gnaw whiskers on the biscuit's weevil dance. Banter bubbles low amid the chew. Bert recounts a Whitechapel tart's wink, Ginger blushes at mill girl's letters, Davy's growls of pre-war Bengal teas, his wallad days a sepia haze before Kitchener's call. Tommy spoons the beef, salt tang sharp on tongue, washing it with char's bitter flood leaves from Assam, overbrewed to mask the water's taint. Rum's glow blooming warm in belly, a fleeting fire gainst the salient seep. The sun crests reluctant, painting the parapet in watery gold, shadows shortening like lifespans in the wire, while rats trench tobacco scuttle bold for crumbs, tails whipping the tin's rim. No man's land stirs faint, a flare's ghost from last night's very pistol, or Fritz's distant whistle, mocking the peace. Tommy savors the pause, mug steaming in palms, the platoons murmur a lullaby against the war's growl, heart easing from stanta's wire-taut dread. Feel the char's warmth spread through you now, listener, its steam a gentle fog on lashes, biscuits crunch a meditative bite, drawing the morning's edge soft. Sipping the scalding mug one last time, eyes turn wary to the parapet. Sentry duty looms, the trench is watchful like claiming its due. Kit inspection whispers. The char wallah's Dixie empties with a final slosh, mugs drained and stacked precarious on the traverse's lip, as the platoon shakes off breakfast's torpor, greatcoats shrugged against the rising damp that clings like a premonition. Sergeant Ellis emerges from his nook, a tarpaulin-draped alcove where maps curl like dead leaves, his pace deliberate, eyes hawk-sharp under the brim of his tin hat, prowling the bay for the morning's ritual scourge, kit inspection, that spit and polish farce amid the mud's tyranny, or parade ground gloss wars with Flanders filth. Fall in, you lot, boots up, seams out, he barks soft, voice gravel wrapped in wool, for shouts draw snipers' kisses from the German loopholes. Tommy stands to, puttees retied hasty over hobnailed boots caked blue-gray, the salience clay a mortar that defies polish, flaking off like scabs to reveal leather warped and weeping. The line forms ragged, rifles presented butt up for bore checks, chambers swabbed with four-oiled rags, lest rust's creeping rut jam the bolt mid-volley, while Ellis thumbs seams for the lice's gray eggs, those trench confidants that hatch in wool's warm folds, biting relentless till the delousing powder's acrid cloud claims them, a ritual thrice daily to stave the trench itch that swells flesh to fever. Boots lifted one by one, soles scraped of clods that could trip a charge, though the sergeant's growl masks pity. Christ, Atkins, you'd sink to China like that knowing trench foot lurks in every sodden sock, toes blanching white then black, amputations whisper if the whale oil rubs falter. Gas masks donned and doffed and drill, flannel snouts inflated like bellows to test the seal, for chlorine's yellow fog rides the wind unbidden, eyes streaming, lungs burning to broth since Ypres first gasp in 15. Post-som, inspections tighten, high command's folly demands smartness for morale's illusion, though the men trade winks, polishing bayonets with spit while mud reclaims the shine in minutes. Quiet fears flicker, bird's seam yields a louse, crushed betwixt nails with a pop like bursting bubble, ginger frets infections rot, his milk calloused hands raw from powder's bite. Sun climbs higher, baking the parapet's sandbags to steam, the inspections end a collective slump as Ellis nods curt, passable, you scruffy bastards, tension uncoiling like a sprung mainspring. Tommy stows his kit, the Enfields wait familiar now, a talisman gainst the void, while the platoon disperses to the trench's vein work, hearts steadied by routine's numbing grace. Let the powder's faint dust settle on your skin, listener, seams whisper a soft scratch, boots thud a grounding rhythm, easing the morning's prickle into calm. Duty's done and gloss fleeting, the trench's endless chores beckon under the rising sun, mud's grip waits, unyielding and patient. Draining the duckboards. The sergeant's nod lingers like a half-forgotten order, the platoon dispersing from inspection's rigid line into the trench's labyrinthine veins, traverses branching like fractured ribs, bays flickering with stubby candles that gutter in drafts snaking from the communication trench back to reserves. Tommy shoulders a sandbag scoop, its Hessian sagging with damp like a waterlogged lung, and slugs to the sump hole at the base foot, a sunken pit, 3 feet square and deeper still, where Flanders clay conspires with rain to pool the salient's tears, turning duckboards to treacherous rafts over a black, sucking abyss. The mud here is no mere soil but a living foe, blue-gray Belgian toothpaste, glutinous and adhesive, born of Ypres impermeable clay that drinks no rain but holds it captive, flooding bays knee-deep after each downpour, a tide that rots boots and breeds the foot's foul surrender. Duckboards, slatted pine planks, splintered and slime-slick, span the sump like gangplanks on a storm-tossed deck, creaking under weight as Tommy kneels, scoop plunging into the murk with a wet glurp, water sloshing up legs and icy rivulets that seep through puttees to numb the skin. Bailing begins in earnest, a Sisyphean rite of the static front, scoop brimming black, heaved over the parapet in arcs that splatter no man's land's craters, adding to the moonscape's pockmarked sea. Mates join the chain, Bert cursing the chill, Ginger's young arms quivering with each lift, while Sump pumps, those hand-cranked iron beasts from Woolwich arsenals, wheeze futile in the corners, clogged with clay that jams the valves like grudges held too long. Post-sum's deluge, when July's rains turned the advance to wade, flooding claimed more Tommies than bullets, drowning in shell holes or succumbing to the rot that swelled feet to bursting sausages, surgeons saws busy as harvest blades. Tommy's breath fogs the air, Scoop's rhythm sinking to the rain's patter on his tin hat, a tinny tattoo that drowns the distant crump of Fritz's morning hate, sporadic shells, whiz-bangs that whistle spiteful before bursting in earth fountains of shale and shrapnel. The sump yields grudging inches, water level dropping to shin depth, but the clay's thirst is endless, walls weeping fresh seepage like wounds that refuse to knit. Bert mutters of home's dry lanes, Ginger frets the rats that swim these depths, pink eyes gleaming as they dog paddle for dropped fags. Tommy pauses to wring his socks, whale oil's greasy sheen of fleeting ward gainst the chill's bite, toes prickling with early warnings of the rot that felled his cousin at loose. Sun filters weak through clouds, gilding the sump's edge in pallid light, the trench's walls, revet with wicker hurdles now frayed to tatters, looming close as a confessor's booth. The bailing abs, duckboards firming underfoot, a fragile victory in mud's domain, hearts steadying to the labor's meditative churn. Feel the water's cool drag on your calves, listener, scoops slosh a soothing cadence, rains veil a merciful blur, easing the morning's toil into transient peace. Water tamed for now, but the wire needs mending out into no man's land's shadow, the patrol's whisper growing near. Sandbag sentinels. The sump's black mirror comes to a shallow skim, duckboards creaking stable under renewed tread, as Tommy sets aside the scoop, its Hessian dripping like a wept confession, and turns to the parapet's crown, where sandbags slump like exhausted hounds, their burlap skins bloated with clay that seeps through seams in gray rivulets, threatening collapse under the next barrage's hammer. Fresh issue arrives via the sapper's mule train from the rear, a string of laden panniers, creaking up the communication trench under private's escort, Hessian sacks stacked like cordwood, each 50 pounds of packed earth to shore the line against Fritz's iron rain. Tommy hauls a pair, shoulders bowing to the weight that grinds like millstone, the salient's mud adding its sly ballast, turning each step on the fire step to a wrestler's heave, sandbags pitched atop the parapet in rhythmic thuds that echo soft down the traverse. Stacking commences, a mason's craft in miniature, bags overlapped like medieval tiles, tamped firm with spades flat to knit a breastwork against shrapnel's spite, loopholes punched for rifles kiss, narrow slits where periscopes peer and Enfields poke, camouflaged with Hessian flaps painted khaki to mock the sniper's eye. The constant repairs are trench life's spine, shells crater the parapet daily, gouging breaches wide as graves, sandbags bursting like overripe fruit to spill their guts in avalanches that bury funkholes whole. Post-some, with Haig's guns chewing a million rounds to July's dust, the line frays faster, Sapper's nights a blur of fill and tamp, Tommy's conscripted by dawn to hold the mend. Hands raw from Hessian's bite, coarse weave fraying to splinters under nails, Tommy layers the stack, mates forming a human chain, Bert pitches from below, Ginger tamps with boyish vigor, the platoon of fleeting guild in mud's cathedral. Rain slicks the work, turning grips treacherous, but the rhythm soothes a thud, a pat, a whispered count, minds adrift to Blighty's hearths, where walls stand unyielding gainst mere weather. Sergeant Ellis oversees from the traverse's crook, his tighter, Atkins, Fritz won't wait for tea, half gruff, half grateful, knowing a weak seam spells enfilade's scythe, sweeping the bay in steel's whisper. The parapet rises renewed, a bulwark of humble sacks gainst the void, sun's wan rays glancing off wet burlap like false hope, while no man's land beckons barren beyond, craters steaming faint, wires barbs glinting cruel. The stack complete, backs ache with earned fire, the trench exhaling in the labor's wake, a momentary fortress in flux's flow. Let the sandbag's weight settle in your shoulders, listener, its thud a grounding pulse, clay's cool smear a tactile hush, drawing the chore's strain into serene release. Walls short and sentinel steady, eyes skin the barren waste, sentry's lonely vigil calls, the horizon's gaze unblinking. Perched on the fire step, the parapet's fresh stacked sandbags settle with a faint sigh, their Hessian weave knitting tight against the sky's indifferent gray, as Tommy claims his perch on the fire step, a splintered ledge hewn from the traverse's rise, just wide enough for haunches to fold and back to brace against the rear wall's crumbly clay, rifle cradled across knees like a fretful child in need of hushing. The Enfield's weight, 7 pounds of walnut and steel, grounds him in the hush, sling looped loose round shoulder to free the bolt for swift action, while his tin hat, ridged and dented from a near-miss whiz-bang, tilts low to shadow eyes from the sun's climbing glare, now piercing clouds and shafts that steam the mud to rising ghosts. Sentry duty claims 2 hours at a stretch, this midday shift a lone wolf's prowl in the platoon's rotation, periscope propped beside like a cyclops, spyglass mirrors angled in a wooden tube, padded with rag to mute the lift, raising cautious to slice the skyline without silhouette's betrayal, for Fritz's snipers nest in camouflaged scrap heaps, Mausers trained on any head's bold bob. No man's land unfurls barren before him, 100 yards of desolation etched in the salient scarred ledger, shell craters yawning like the mouths of the damned, some brimmed with rainwater turned brackish by corpses' secret leech, others dry and treacherous with hidden barbs, barbed wire coils and rusted concertina, festooned with tatters of khaki and feldgrau, rags fluttering like surrender flags in the breeze that carries faint, rotting sweetness on its wings. Tommy's gaze traces the tangle, marking gaps where wiring parties mended under moon's blind eye, or fresh barbs glinting cruel where last night's patrol left their mark, a Tommy's glove snagged high, or a Fritz's helmet crown up in mocking truce. The monotony is the true foe here, hours bleeding into haze where mind wanders unbidden, to Lancashire's cobbled streets, the mill's loom clatter a symphony kinder than guns, to Sweetheart Nell's letters, creased and scented faint with lavender, promising home by Christmas though calendars mock the vow. Postsoms charnel, centuries bear heavier watch, July's folly cratered the earth anew, unearthing bones from 15's gas, a reminder that the land remembers slaughters past, yielding them up in rain's churn. A rat, bold trench denizen, fat on bully scraps, scuttles the wire's fringe, pink nose twitching at the air, unperturbed by the deadlock's stare, distant, a starling's trill defies the waste, a black dart against the gray. Tommy shifts subtle, toes flexing gainst trench foot's numb creep, the periscope's cold glass fogging with breath, heart's rhythm sinking to the wind's low moan, a dirge for the unseen. Sergeant Ellis pads past once, boot thud soft, a murmured steady, Atkins eyes out, not in trailing like smoke. The vigil holds, a fragile thread gainst the void's pull, sun arcing slow to bake the clay to cracking size. Feel the fire steps unyielding wood under you, listener. Rifles curve a comforting arc, horizons blur a meditative veil, drawing midday's weight into whispered peace. Hours tick by in the watch's unhurried flow, belly rumbling soft with char's echo. Midday rations promise a brief mercy, the platoon's call drifting faint. Whispers of the wind. The periscope dips silent to the step's edge, mirrors catching a glint of sun that warms Tommy's knuckles briefly, chasing the sentry's solitude with a fleeting thaw, as the wind, Flanders' fickle breath, veering from northwest chill to southeast's clammy kiss, stirs the wire into faint song, barbs humming low like harp strings plucked by ghosts. It carries whispers across the divide, faint German snatches, ACH, comrade in a sentry's mutter, or the wheeze of a harmonica's lament, Lily Marlene perhaps, a shared dirge in the deadlock's hush. Closer, shrapnel's wine trails a spent shell, high and lonesome like a train's farewell, bursting harmless in the rear to scatter clods on reserves. Tommy hunkers deeper, greatcoat drawn round like a monk's cowl, the Enfield's foresight aligned on a stump that might be Fritz's head or mere root, finger light on the guard lest cramp seize the trigger and twitch. The psychological toll whispers too, shell shock shadow in every mate's 1,000-yard stare, nerves frayed by the weight, the bangs prelude more dread than blast, doctors at the CCS coining neurasthenia, 4 souls unstrung by Ypres grind. Mind drifts on the gusts, to home's hearth where dad mends clogs by gaslight, mum's suet puds steaming, worlds severed by the salient scar, letters home censored to all fine, trench quiet, hiding the rat's feast or lice's march. Bert's relief nears, his shuffle audible down the traverse, boots sloshing some skirts, a fag's cherry glow bobbing like will-o'-the-wisp, but the wind teases delay, whipping a loose sandbag flap to slap the parapet, heart leaping to sniper's crack that never comes. Post-some, whispers turn prophetic, rumors of tanks, landships to crawl the craters, or gas new and silent, Phosgene's apple scent luring lungs to drown. Tommy fingers his mask straps, flannel musty with disuse, a talisman against the yellow peril that choked 15's first wave. A flare pops distant, Fritz's very pistol, green star blooming brief to paint no man's land in verdant ghost light, silhouettes sharpening, then fading to black, the wind swallowing the sizzle. Ginger's voice drifts faint from the bay, a hummed "It's a long way to Tipperary," Morale's threadbare cloak, joining the gust's chorus. Sun dips toward meridian, shadows pooling in traverses like spilled ink, the watches end a horizon's promise, rifle's barrel cooling in the breeze's caress. Tommy exhales slow, the wind's murmur a bomb against the vigil's wire-taut thread, platoon stirring to midday's call. Let the whispers weave through your hair, listener, wind sigh a soft exhalation, flares ghost a fleeting dream, easing the sentry's gaze into tranquil drift. Relief arrives with the platoon's low hum, but the wire party's shadow falls, patrol time nears, night's cloak waiting to claim the repair. Slipping over the parapet. Relief's shuffle reaches Tommy like a comrade's pat, Bert's low your turn for the wire, mate, his cockney drawl laced with the false cheer of shared sentence as the fire step relinquishes its perch, rifle slung across back to free hands for the night's grim craft. The wiring party forms in the traverse's crook, 6 shadows from the platoon, Tommy, Ginger with cutters clutched like rosary beads, 2 Lancasters hefting coils of fresh barbs, and Davies the Walla on rear guard with a Lewis gun's awkward sprawl, its panmags jingling faint. Sergeant Ellis briefs and murmurs, map unrolled on a sandbag like a gambler's hand. Gap at 50 yards, snip the old, string the new, no chatter, flare up and freeze. The parapet's lip looms, sandbags hump to aid the drop, Tommy's hearted drum muffled under khaki, for no man's land's embrace is no gentle lover but a widowmaker, claiming more in wire tangles than open charge. Nightfall cloaks the slip, sun's last smear bleeding to indigo as Tommy vaults the bags, greatcoat snagging brief on barbs that kiss like thorns, body pitching forward into the crawl, a belly drag through mud's cold porridge, elbows gouging furrows, knees grinding shale that bites like gravel teeth. The cutters dangle from Ginger's neck, Sheffield steel sheathed in oilcloth, their jaws forged for concertina's rusted coils, miles of it festooning the zone, a steel labyrinth to shred the raider's charge or trap the unwary in bleeding knots. Dangers lurk in every shadow, flares sudden bloom from Fritz's sentries, turning crawlers to clay pigeons for machine guns chatter, tripwires humming invisible, mines buried shallow as grudges, detonated by boots' misplaced kiss, or patrols clashing in the dark, bayonets crossing in silent frenzy that ends in throats gurgle. Post-Somm's wire hell, or July's guns chewed tangles to impassable jungles, parties like this mend nightly Hague's attrition demanding the line's unyielding scar, though the earth reclaims barbs and days, rust and rain conspiring with the dead's weight. Tommy's breath fogs the mud, inches from Ginger's heels, the party's snake uncoiling slow, coils of new wire dragging furrows that might spell doom by dawn's light. The gap reveals itself, a ragged tear in the concertina, old strands splayed like broken limbs from last week's barrage, barbs hooked on bone fragments that whisper of the unburied. Cutters snip rhythmic, steel meeting steel in bites that echo too loud in the hush, sparks faint as fireflies, while Lancasters unspool the fresh line, barbs glinting cruel in the very light's afterglow. A flare whispers up, green starburst painting the waste and lurid day, party freezes mid-breath, bodies flat as the fallen, hearts thundering silent till the dark reclaims them, sizzle fading to wind's moan. Sergeant hisses steady, eyes out, his Webley a dark star at hip. The crawl's chill seeps deep, mud caking face to mask, Tommy's mind flickering to Nell's photo tucked in paybook, her smile a talisman against the void. Let the wire's cold kiss graze your palms, listener. Cutters snip a meditative clip, flares hush a breathless pause, drawing the patrol's edge into shadowed calm. Wire reinforced in the night's patient weave, hearts pounding steady, back to the trenches fold, but shells hunger for the afternoon's close, their distant growl awakening. The silent repair. The flare's emerald ghost fades to black, painting afterimages on retinas like sins unshriven, as the party exhales collective and resumes the mend, Ginger's cutters resuming their hushed symphony, jaws shearing rusted strands with a twang muffled by rag-wrapped grips, each severed barb a small exorcism of the gap's vulnerability. Tommy coils the fallen wire, gloves fraying to fingers raw and blood-smeared, the steel's hooks digging like accusations, while Lancasters thread the new line through posts, rough stakes of hawthorn driven silent with mallet's padded tap, barbs spaced cruel to rake the charger's flesh or snag the scout's sleeve. The concertina unfurls anew, a steel serpent reborn in the waste, its coils interlocking like prayers for the dawn patrol's safe return, for raids slither these paths by moon's rise, Fritz's stormtroopers probing for weakness with grenades' spite or bayonet's kiss. Fear's grip is velvet here, not iron, a quiet clench in gut, breath measured to the wind's whim, for noise is death's herald, a dropped cutter's clink, a boot's squelch too loud, summoning the MG-08's brass harvest from across the void. Historical nights like this stitch the front's ragged hem, wiring parties, the unsung sappers of the infantry, nightly ventures since Mon's retreat in 14, mending what shells unmake, those Psalms thunder turned tangles to impassable thorns, trapping Tommies in no man's hell till tanks dreamed their crawl. Post-July's folly, with Hague's guns silent but for spite, parties grow bolder yet brittle, supplies thin, barbs ration to essentials, the salient's clay swallowing stakes like hungry graves. Mates' breaths fog close, a shared exhalation in the prone press, birds whisper like thread in a needle with a bayonet drawing stifled snorts, morale's threadbare jest gainst the dread. Tommy tugs the line taut, barbs biting glove to draw a bead of blood that wells dark, minded drift to Lancashire's hedgerows. Hawthorn blooms in May, not this steel winter, while a rat-fat sentinel of the waste scuttles past, nose twitching at the iron's tang. Sergeant circles low, shadow merging with crater's lip, his tighter Fritz'll dance through that a goad wrapped in gruff care, knowing a weak coil invites the raid's red harvest, prisoners dragged to Hohenzollern's cells or worse. The repair nears end, coils knit seamless, the gap erased to illusion of steel's web, parties snake reversing slow, drag marks smooth with boots sweep to baffle the dawn's eye. Moon silver no man's land faint, craters pooling shadow like spilled mercury, the trenches parapet a distant rampart calling home. Hearts ease and the withdrawals creep, the night's labor a fragile ward gainst tomorrow's whim, bodies aching with mud's borrowed weight. Feel the barbs reluctant yield under your touch, listener, coils twist a soothing spiral, night's hush an enveloping cloak, drawing the repair's strain into tranquil release. Duty done in the shadow's patient craft, the barrage builds from afar, afternoon's fury stirs, shells thunder rolling near. The first whistle. The party's crawl reverses in a serpentine hush, coils dragging final furrows smoothed by boots whisper, as Tommy vaults the parapet back to the trench's fold, sandbags yielding with a muffled thump, body collapsing into the traverse's angled sanctuary, mud smeared and breathless, the night's toil etched in barbs fresh scratches that sting like accusations under gloves chafe. The bay stirs to midday's drowse, mates sprawled on duckboards with fags lazy trails, Bert's deck of cards slapping soft in a game of pontoon, Ginger nursing a mug of char gone cold, when the first whistle keens a high, descending wail like a banshee's dirge, slicing the air from the German line's distant batteries, Krupp's 5.9-inch howitzers belching their spite across the salient's curve. Down! Sergeant Ellis's bark cuts the lull, a whip crack of command, as the platoon dives for the traverse walls, those zigzagging baffles of clay and sandbag, parry to the shrapnel's sweeping scythe, bodies piling in heaps, tin hats clanging like discordant bells, hearts slamming ribcage in primal tattoo. The shell arcs unseen, a mathematical ghost plotted by gunners miles rearward, fusing time to air burst over the line, and bursts in a geyser of earth and iron, crump echoing like God's own hammer on anvil, the blast wave rippling the air to shove breath from lungs, clods raining in patters that thud the parapet like hail from hell. Tommy hugs the wall's curve, greatcoat drawn overhead, the Enfield clutched talisman tight, while the traverse shields from enfilade's kiss, though fragments whine wicked, ricocheting off sandbags and sparks that sear the gloom. Artillery reigns supreme in this war's calculus, 90% of casualties from its maw, not bayonets romance but shrapnel's impersonal sleet, high explosive shells from 18-pounders in counterbattery, gas canisters drifting lazy on wind's whim, or the creeping barrage that paced the Somme ghost armies forward into wire. Post-July's thunder, when Haig's guns chewed 1,000 rounds per minute to churn the earth to porridge, afternoon hates like this grow routine, Fritz's revenge for dawn's potshots, random as rain but lethal in aggregate, claiming a Tommy here, a funk hole there. The barrage builds, whistles multiplying to a shrieking chorus, bursts marching the line like a drunkard's stagger, one craters the bay's end, earth erupting in black fountain that buries duckboards under shale, another air bursts overhead, ball bearings sleeting the parapet and steel's deadly confetti, a mate's curse blooming sharp as the sting claims his cheek. Rain of clods peppers the traverse, mud's what slap on tin hat a bizarre percussion, while the air thickens with cordite's burnt sugar reek, eyes watering in the acrid fog. Bert mutters bloody postcards from Berlin, his jest a fragile raft on fear's tide, Ginger's whimpers lost to the din, platoon huddled in shared animal press, breaths sinking to the shell's erratic pulse. The storm peaks brief, a dozen rounds spite, then ebbs to sporadic whines, the salient exhaling in the sudden quiet, ears ringing with phantom whistles that mock the peace. Tommy uncurls slow, clay dusting lashes, The walls embrace releasing like a reluctant lover, survival's sigh a bomb against the thunder's theft. Feel the blast's distant rumble in your chest, listener, fragments whine a fading keen, clods fall a soft patter, drawing the barrage's fury into echoing calm. Barrage ebbs at last, ears ringing like struck bells, stand to at dusk gathers the line, rifles rising to meet the twilight's call. Echoes in the crater. The last shell's echo rolls reluctant into silence, a fading growl swallowed by the salient sodden hush, leaving the trench a pockmarked ruin, parapet gouged like a giant's claw mark, duckboards splintered to raft wreck, sandbags ruptured to spill their clay guts in avalanches that choke the sump anew. Tommy rises on elbows scraped raw, the traverse's wall crumbling under palm like stale cake, and peers into the bay's disarray, mates stirring in the gloom, Bert spitting grit with a rind mist me brew, the bastards, while Ginger claws mud from eyes, his boy face streaked to war paint. The platoon fans cautious, rifles at port to fend the crater's lip, where the final burst yawned a fresh wound, 10 feet wide and deeper, steaming like a cauldron's breath in the afternoon's chill, edges slumped and slick, exhaling the mineral tang of violated earth mingled with cordite's bite. Checking begins in whispers, a ritual of the shelled. Sound off, lads, limbs and lights, Sergeant Ellis's tally cutting the ring, as hands probe the gloom for buried souls, shovels scraping tentative where the blast buried a funkhole's edge, unearthing a buried pack with tins dented but whole, a mate's arm emerging pale and trembling from the slide. Crater's inspection reveals the war's indifferent math, shrapnels scatter claiming no blood this hour, though the salience ledger tallies thousands. Thus shells the great leveler, felling officer and Tommy alike in iron's impartial rain. Postsum's harvest where July 1st claimed 11,000 in minutes, Crater's swallowing company's whole in the advance's churn. Tommy circles the lip, boot toe testing the slump, peering into the void where roots dangle like hanged men, the steam rising in curls that veil the base, a ghost breath from the clay's wounded heart. Psychological release steals in with survival's sigh, the barrage's theft undone, no mate vaporized to red mist, no limb claimed for the MO's saw. Though the ring in ears persists, a tinnitus hymn that blurs the wind's return, mind replaying the whistles in endless loop, shell shock's subtle hook tugging at frayed nerves. Bert slaps his back, Teal fix it, Atkins strong as me old man's oaths, just weaving morale's mend, while Ginger retrieves a lost helmet, its crown starred by fragments kiss, a talisman of the spared. The platoon rebuilds soft, shovels fill the crater's maw with clods and rubble, tamped to seal the scar, duckboards bridged anew with scavenged plank, the bay exhaling in labor's quiet rhythm. Sun slants low now, gilding the crater's rim in bloody copper, shadows lengthening to finger the wire, the salient's hush reclaiming its throne with birdsong's defiant trill. Tommy shoulders the Enfield once more, its wood warmed by the fray's ghost heat, heart steadying to the platoon's murmur, survival's afterglow a fleeting whine. Let the crater's steam curl round your face, listener, earth's rumble a distant memory, clods sift a soothing sash, easing the storm's echo into serene fade. Dusk falls gentle on the mended line, rifles rise again in the twilight's hush, evening's watch mirrors dawn's dread, bayonets gleaming to greet the gloaming. Bayonets gleam anew. The crater's fresh fill settles under tamped clods, a makeshift scar in the bay's battered face, as the sun's arc dips toward the horizon's bruised line, painting the salient in strokes of amber and ash that gild the wire's barbs to fleeting gold. Sergeant Ellis's whistle, 2 short blasts, the stentor's summons ripples the trench like a pebble in sump, pulling the platoon from shelling's stupor, bodies unfolding from traverses with the creak of overtaxed joints, tin hats adjusted low against the evening's promise of raid's red teeth. The second stent acclaims 1,700 hours sharp, twilight's witching twin to dawn's dread, when shadows lengthen to cloak the creep and fog thickens with the day's exhaled damp, turning no man's land to a velvet void where Fritz's patrols prowl bolder, stormtroopers slinking from saps with saw-toothed clubs and potato masher grenades. Tommy mounts the fire step anew, the wood still warm from midday's perch, bayonet fixed with a snick that echoes crisp in the hush, its blade catching the dying light like a vow etched in steel, 17 inches of Sheffield edge thirsty for the unlikely clash, though most nights end in stares across the wire's unyielding moat. The lineman's ragged, 20 khaki ghosts along the sector's curve, Enfield shouldered in silhouette against the parapet's breastwork, periscopes rising like wary serpents to slice the gloaming without the head's fatal bob. Raid fears heighten here, post-sounds lessons carved in the unburied, July's dusk charges faltered in wires snarl, but twilight's murk favors the bold, Fritz's hand-streacher raids, knife fights in the dark for prisoners' tongues or lines soft probe, claiming ears and eyes in the melee's frenzy, sentries first warning the very flares bloom where grenades arc. Tommy peers through the fog's gathering folds, the zone's craters pooling ink black, stumps looming spectral where orchards once bowed to. Wind, a distant low of Fritz's cattle gun mocking the peace. Mind steals to the weight, the bayonet's pommel cool under palm, while Bert mutters fancy as scrap, Atkins? Better than cards, his jest a shield gainst the shiver that creeps with light's theft. Sergeant pads the step, Webley at hip like a dark familiar, his bayonet's bright. Lads, no slacking for Jerry's bedtime story, half growl, half grimace, knowing the drill's monotony masks the toll, nerves jangled from afternoon's hate, eyes straining for Russell's truth or trick. Dusk deepens, colors bleeding to monochrome, the salience hush amplifying the small, a rat's splash and sump, the drip from a sandbag's seam, wind carrying faint got MITUNS from across the void, a shared incantation in the deadlock's prayer. The stand to holds taut, an hour's vigil in twilight's throat, rifles alignment a meditative rite, hearts flutter ebbing to the line's collective breath. Feel the bayonet's gleam fade on your fingertips, listener, steps unyielding brace a steady perch, gloaming's hush a velvet draw, easing the vigil's wire into tranquil watch. All clear sighs at last, rifles lowering with the lights surrender, dinner's smoky promise drifts from cookers, the platoon's murmur calling soft. Fading lights deceptions. The all-clear's murmur threads the line like contraband solace, bayonets unshipped with metallic sighs, the fire step yielding its claim as the platoon descends the traverse in a shuffle of loosened limbs, twilight's pall now full-throated, shadows pooling in bays like spilled midnight, the salient's clay walls merging to indistinct gloom where candle stubs wink tentative from funk holes. Tommy folds into the dugout's low arch, Enfield propped beside like a sentinel's brother, the greatcoat shed to shake clods that patter like hesitant rain, revealing shirt sleeves rolled against the evening's clammy grip, lice as itch a faint prickle neath the weave. Fading light plays deceiver's hand, every rustle in the wire a German ghost, barbs faint creak the patrol's approach, where winds tease through sandbag gaps conjuring the flare's ghost bloom that never comes, mind's eye painting stormtroopers and Feldgrau wraiths, clubs raised in the dark, though the night's true haunt is the weight, psyches frayed by deception's toll, shell shocks whisper in the twitch that starts at leaf's fall or mate's cough. Shadows thicken to confound, the parapet's outline blurring to a rampart of myth, no man's land a canvas for phantoms, craters imagined as saps burrowing near, stumps as heads peering sly, the wind's sough mimicking boots creep where grenades pin pull, turning the vigilant to jump at nothing's jest. Post-sound spectral harvest, where dusk raids reaped intel and blood's barter, prisoners dragged kicking for accents secrets or lines morale, deception sharpen the edge, Tommy's trading tales of Jerry's lantern tricks, flares time to catch the relief stagger, though most nights end in stares, the deadlock's cruel jest. Bert strikes a lucifer, Fag's glow blooming brief to light his mustache's curl, seen in myself Fritz with horns, dancin' in the wire, his yarn award gainst the dark's nibble, Ginger nodding wide-eyed, his mill lad nerves raw as the dusk's illusions. Sergeant Ellis lingers at the step's lip, silhouette merging with night, his lights low. Lads, save the show for dawn, a nod to the blackout's iron rule. Candles hooded to slits lest Fritz's spotters call the guns. Tommy rubs temples, the day's ledger stand at twice, shells spite. Wires bite, settling like mud in veins, the trench's rhythm a dirge that lulls yet alerts, every shadow a potential grave. Moonrise hints faint through clouds, silvering the wire to a snare's gleam, the salient's chorus swelling soft, owls call defying the guns, a harmonica's wheeze from reserves, the distant crump of night hate's prelude. The deceptions ease in the platoon's press, murmurs weaving a net gainst the void, hearts sinking to the night's unhurried pulse. Let the shadows play, tease your edges, listener, rustles hush a soft murmur, lights fade a gentle veil, drawing the vigil's tricks into peaceful unravel. Night deepens its claim on the line, rations shared in the gloom, letters from home light the dark, their folded words a beacon soft. Bully beef by brazier. Twilight's all clear fades to the trench's baseline thrum, the fire steps ghosts dispersing into bays where funkholes huddle like beggars round a spark, as the platoon turns to evening's ritual anchor, rations, that daily sacrament of survival doled from the cooker's smoky heart. Sergeant Ellis signals the call, grub up, you lot, before Fritz smells the jam, his voice a gravel anchor in the gloaming, while the char walla Davies stokes the brazier anew, a tin hearth of sand and coke flickering defiant gainst the night's clammy siege, flames leaping brief to paint faces in ruddy halos, shadows dancing long across sandbag walls like revelers at a wake. Mess tins clatter forth from packs, enamel relics scarred by bayonets pry and shells spite, clustered round the glow where the Dixie simmers, stews bubble a low and that drowns the wind's moan, steam veiling mustaches in merciful blur. Dinner unfurls from the wagon's morning hall, bully beef, fray bentos tinned bounty pried open with opener's wheeze, corn slabs pink and greasy, hashed with biscuit crumbs to stretch the yield. McConaughey's stew if luck holds, a canned mire of carrot chunks and mystery meat in gravy thick as sump sludge, heated slow to mask the tin's metallic tang. Rum ration follows, the tot poured from a stone jar under the major's blind eye, 2 ounces of Navy issue, dark as regret and fiery as absolution, chased neat to dull the cold's bite and the day's ledger of dread. The platoon's circle tightens, spoons dipping rhythmic into tins, the brazier's pop sinking to the chew, beef's salt bloom on tongue, biscuits resilient crunch yielding to stew's embrace, a calories truce gainst the salient's theft, 2,000 souls fuel, rations strict since Psalm's voracious July, when supply lines choked on mud's maw, leaving Tommies to gnaw whiskers on hardtack or trade fags for a phantom egg. Banter blooms low amid the sup, Bert recounts a Whitechapel Pie's ghost, none owe this yank slop, his fork stabbing dramatic, Ginger savor shy, mill lad's hunger bottomless, while Davies growls of Bengal curries, spices lost to the Rajah's call. Tommy spoons deliberate, the stew's warmth flooding belly like a lover's sigh, room's glow chasing the dusk shiver from limbs, the funkhole's low roof sealing the circle in shared press, lice's faint march forgotten in the meal's grace. Post-Psalms famine, where Haig's push devoured 1,000,000 tins in a week's folly, evenings like this mend the fray, morale's grease to the war's dry grind, though the tins' labels peel like lies, promising prime cuts from Chicago's illusions. Moon silver no man's land faint beyond the parapet, craters winking like eyes in the dark, while the brazier's embers dyed a ruddy coal, the platoons murmur a lullaby gainst the night's growl. Tins scrape empty, rum's afterburn a quiet fire, hearts easing in the feast's fleeting hold. Feel the stew's steam on your face, listener, spoons dip a soothing rhythm, braziers crackle a hearth's distant kin, drawing evening's edge into sated calm. Bellies full with the night's modest yield, parcels arrive from the rear's mule train, mail's tender threads, letters seals unbroken. The Dixie's bubble quiets to a sigh, tins stacked precarious by the brazier's dying glow, as the post-corporal's shuffle announces the evening's true bounty, mail call. That fragile lifeline slung from Blighty's post and Hessian sacks hauled up the communication trench, dodging Fritz's night hate with mule's sure foot and private's prayer. Post, rings soft down the line, a clarion kinder than bugles brass, the platoon surging like children at Yuletide, hands outstretched for the ledger's tally, names barked in alphabetical hush, Atkins, T.1 from mother. The corporal's voice a bridge round vowels warped by Lancashire rain. Tommy claims his packet, envelope creased from the channel's crossing, ink smudged but Nell's script blooming bold. My dearest Tom, the mill's looms sing without you, scent of lavender faint as hope, tucked with a pressed violet from the garden's defiant bloom. The circle reforms round the brazier, candles hooded to slits lest Fritz's spotters call the guns. Wax stubs guttering in clay saucers, their light pooling gold on pages that unfold like secrets shared in confessional dark. Reading commences in murmurs, letters a mosaic of home's hearth, Mom's scrawl of ration queues and blackout drills, Dad's stoic factories flat out, mind the wire, lad, Nell's tender weave of village fates and phantom dances, censored gaps where trench becomes front, despair veiled and proud of you, despair the censor's blue pencil. The emotional toll whispers subtle, joy's spark in a line of love, grief's hook in news of a mate's kin fallen to flue's shadow, the disconnects ache, Blighty's time marching sundial slow while the salience clocks tick in Shell's measure, letters dated weeks past, arriving like echoes from a life half-dreamt. Post-Som's deluge of dead, mail swells with widows' pleas and children's scrawls, morale's ballast gainst the wire's grind, though the platoon shares round, Bert reads aloud a sweetheart's tease, drawing chuckles raw as the rum, Ginger treasures a ribbon, cheeks flushing in the glow, his mill girl's vows a shield gainst the dark. Tommy traces Nell's loops, Violet's petal crumbling to dust twixt fingers, minded drift to cobbled lanes where gas lamps bloom. The letters wait a talisman gainst the night's unbidden ghosts, shelled shocks murmur in the page's crease, or raid's phantom in the wind's sough. Sergeant Ellis claims his lone missive, mustache twitching at wife's lines, a rare crack in the sergeant's plate. Moon climbs higher, silvering the parapet's edge, the salience hush amplifying the page's rustle like contraband whispers. Distant crump of night hate's prelude a counterpoint to the circle's hush. Letters fold away slow, seals tucked safe in paybook's leather, the platoon's bond knit tighter in shared longing, hearts buoyed brief on memory's tide. Let the ink's faint scent linger on your breath, listener, pages turn a gentle unfold, candles flicker a soft beacon, drawing mail's ache into whispered solace. Words folded against the night's chill, night's watches claim the hours, sentinels shift stirring the line. Letters tucked safe gainst the night's encroaching chill, Nell's violet crumbling to memory's dust and paybook's crease. Tommy rises from the funkhole's low huddle, the dugout's air stale with spent char and unwashed wool, to claim his midnight shift, 2 hours lone vigil on the fire step, the platoon's rotation doling the dark like meager rations, each man a island in the salient sea of shadow. Sergeant Ellis taps his shoulder in passing, midnight to 2, Atkins eyes wide, ears sharper, his voice gravel soft to pierce the hush without rousing Fritz's spies, while the line stirs in fragmented relay. Bert slumps to his funkhole with a yawn masked as growl, Ginger curls fetal under greatcoat's wing, the trench exhaling in the watch's handoff, candles snuffed to slits that wink like conspirators in the bay's gloom. Tommy mounts the steps slow, duckboards creaking under hobnails worn to stubs, the parapet's sandbags cool and yielding under palm like a beast's flank at rest, Enfield shouldered loose for the night's long lean, periscope propped ready to lift without the head's fatal crown. Midnight's throne is solitude's cruel jest, no man's land of black canvas pricked by wires faint gleam under moon's reluctant rise, craters voids that swallow sound and sight, the winds sough the only tide, carrying rats scuttle where distant owls query as harbingers of the void. Very lights pop sporadic from Fritz's sentries, a green or golden starburst blooming brief, bathing the zone in day's cruel parody, shadows sharpening to knives that carve the wire's coils into stark relief, every stump ahead, every bush a bayonet's glint. Party freezes mid-breath till the sizzle fades, darkness rushing back like a thief's reprieve. Raid preps wait in the wings, phosphor bombs stacked by the step, their glass vials primed with phosphorus white-hot spite to blind the creepers, Mills grenades heavy in the ammo pouch, pineapple grooves ready for the lob, though most watches end in stares, the deadlock's lullaby of wind and wire. Post-Somm's nocturnal harvest, where July's dusk bled into dawn's raids, Fritz's Sturmtruppen slitting throats for tongues or lines, midnight shifts bear the brunt, nerves strung like piano wire, the lone guard a lightning rod for the dark's whims. Tommy peers through the periscope's glass, fogged faint with breath, marking the gap mended hours past, barbs a silver net gainst the phantom charge, mind adrift to Lancashire's clock tower chimes, midnights toll their a curfew's sigh, not this eternal now. A flare whispers up anew, green ghost illuminating the waste and verdant hush, the sentinel's form etched bold then mercifully blurred as night reclaims its due, hearts stutter easing to the wind's return. The trench sleeps fitful below, snores rasping from bays, a mate's cough rippling the line like warning's echo. The watch holds patient, rifles curve a meditative hold, the salient's midnight a vast, breathing beast. Feel the periscope's chill on your cheek, listener, flares bloom a fleeting veil, boots stamp a grounding thrum, drawing the sentinel's hush into tranquil guard. Watch ends with the night's unhurried turn, dugout calls, but relief whispers of rest, though rumors stir the line. The flare's afterglow fades to ink, midnight's canvas redrawn in shadow's hand, as Tommy's shift nears its 2-hour span, the fire steps vigil yielding to the trench's undercurrent murmur, whispers threading the bays like contraband smoke, mates stirring in funkholes to pass the rumor, dawn raid brewin', lads, Fritz sniffin' for a scrap. Sergeant Ellis materializes from the traverse's gloom, his form a bulkier shade in the hooded candle's waver, briefing in hisses that coil gainst the wind, word from signals, Jerry's moss-sinned saps, prisoners for the Kaiser's tea-time chat, phosphors primed, Mills at hand, no heroics. The platoon rouses reluctant, greatcoats shrugged gainst the deepening chill, rifles fetched from props with bolts cycled quiet, the line prickling like fur gainst storm's approach, for night ops are the war's sly underbelly, trench raids since Neufchapelle's 15, knife dances in the dark for intel's barter, accents gleaned for dialect secrets, lines probed for weak seams, those Somm's wire hell turn most to bloodbaths, raiders snared in barb's embrace, bayonets crossing in frenzy that claims more sentries than stormtroopers. Rumors swell in the hush, low jokes masking the knot and gut, Bert's fancy of Fritz for breakfast. Tastes like sauerkraut, drawing stifles that crackle like embers, Ginger's wide eyes fixed on the wire, his mill lad dreams of home curdled to raid's red reel, while Davy's fingers his cookery's curve, Bengal's ghosts in the blade's gleam. Fear wears velvet gloves here, not the barrage's roar but the weight's slow gnaw, psyches etched by the unseen, every flare's pop a spotlight's threat, every rustle the sap's head breaching wire, Grenad's arc a comet's tail in the black. Post-July's folly, where Haig's dusk pushes fed Fritz's counter-raids, Stostruppen with clubs studded nail and gas masks snout, dragging Tommy's kicking to regimental cells, 4 questionings art whispers turn prophetic, signals crackle hinting massed shadows beyond the concertina, the salients curve a funnel for the probe. Tommy shoulders the Enfield, bayonets pommel a cold talisman, mind replaying loose tales from old hands, raids gone to melee's madness, mates lost to the morning hate that greets the dawn. Phosphor vials chill and palm, their shatter promising white fires blind, Mills wait a promise of shrapnel's kiss, the platoon a coiled spring in the bays, breaths measured to the wind's whim. Moon veils behind clouds, the zone a pit of unplumbed black, distant crump of Fritz's night hate a prelude's growl, the whispers coiling tighter gainst the dark's loom. Sergeant nods the line's readiness, his steady "let 'em come, we'll sing 'em tips," jest's edge honed sharp, morale's frayed thread gainst the incoming's hook. The murmurs hold, a fragile ward in midnight's throat, hearts sinking to the night's uneasy pulse. Let the whispers brush your ear, listener, rumors coil a soft spiral, rage shadow a gentle press, drawing the night's edge into watchful peace. Dawn nears with the cycle's turn, sleep's fragile gift in the funk hole, though the line stirs to its renewal. Relief's tap on shoulder, Ginger's tentative "off you go." Tom Dawn's peepin' pulls Tommy from the fire step's vigil, the periscope's glass fogged with night's dew lowered like a curtain's fall, as the trench stirs to the pre-dawn's graying hush, the last all-clear rippling soft through bays like a benediction unspoken. The rotation's fourth night ebbs, for days toll etched in mud's mask and bone-deep ache, the salients grind a ledger of stantios twice daily, shells spite, wires bite, watches that steal sleep in fragments too small to mend, yet survival's quiet luck whispers through the fog. No raid's red harvest this turn, no mate dragged kicking to Fritz's cells, the line intact as dawn's first blush paints the parapet in watered rose. Tommy descends the traverse slow, duckboards slick with night's condensation, Enfield slung loose across back like a weary pilgrim's staff, the funk hole welcoming with its low arch and straw-strewn floor, mates forms tangled in greatcoats' nests, snores rasping irregular as the wind's last sough. Sergeant Ellis lingers at the step's lip, his silhouette merging with the gloom, a final well held, "Lads, sleep while you can," gravel laced with the rare unguent of praise, knowing relief's mule train nears from support lines, fresh faces to claim the fronts crowned by morn. The dugout's gloom envelopes, candles stub guttering to coal, its light dying on walls revet with frayed hurdles that bow like bowed heads, the air thick with wool's damp and unwashed brotherhood, some strip a metronome to the settling. Tommy peels sodden puttees, toes prickling with trench foot's numb retreat, whale oil daubed hasty from the tin's last dregs, a greasy ward gainst the rot that claims legs in the wet siege. Post-some spectral toll, where July's mud drowned advances and drowned souls alike, craters brimming with the unburied, rotations blurred to endless now. This all clear feels a minor miracle, the platoon's ledger balanced in blood's deferral, though the salient's curve claims its due elsewhere. Distant crumps from Messina's ridge and night's lullaby of elsewhere's woe. Bert mutters half-dreamt of Whitechapel lamps, Ginger curls with a sigh that breaks the hush, Davy's cookery propped like a guardian idol, the bay a fragile ark in the war's flood. Tommy reflects in the dark's confessional, Nell's letters violet dust and paybook, Mum's scrawl of home's hearths, the mills hum a ghost song gainst the wire's dirge, survival's luck a coin flipped merciful, though tomorrow's stand awaits with dawn's indifferent eye. Fog rolls thick from the low ground, veiling the parapet in merciful blur, the salient's hush deepening to cradle the weary, hearts easing from midnight's wire-taut thread to the funk hole's yielding hold. Feel the all-clear sigh in your lungs, listener, fog's cool drift a gentle shroud, dugouts press a comforting weight, drawing the night's toll into whispered release. Hole welcomes weary bones at last, dreams beckon soft through the mist, yet the cycle's turn hints at renewal's quiet stir. The funk hole's straw yields like forgiving earth, Tommy curling into the greatcoat's woolen nest, its weight a brother's arm round shoulder, mud's crust flaking soft as the fog's first kiss, while the dugout seals gainst the pre-dawn's chill, some strip fading to a rhythm akin to rain on Lancashire's slate, breath sinking in the platoon's huddled tide. Sleep claims piecemeal, the war's thief leaving fragments, dreams drift to fields green as May's promise, hedgerows hawthorn white where Nell's laugh scatters petals like confetti, the mills looms a symphony kinder than guns, Dad's pipe smoke curling round tales of Zulu dust worlds severed by the salient scar, yet vivid in the muds between, where the trench's cycle turns eternal, Dawn's stinted to dusk's vigil, ration's meager grace, watches that weave the night to shreds. The broader war's shadow looms even in slumber, Soam's ghosts marching endless, July's first day a harvest of 60,000 souls in wire and crater, Hague's attrition a millstone grinding empires to dust, the salients curve a funnel for the flood, Ypres bells tolling faint for the unnumbered lost. Tommy stirs half-wake, the Enfield stock a cold companion at hand, mind replaying the day's ledger, char's scald, shells whine, letters inked survival's quiet ledger, Lux coins spun merciful in the dark. Mate's forms anchor the dream, birds snore a Whitechapel foghorn, Ginger's murmur of mill girls' ribbons, Davy's breath steady as Bengal's Ganges, the platoon of family forged in the funkhole's press, bonds tighter than blood in the war's indifferent maw. Post-16's grind, where Passchendaele loomed like winter's wolf, mud deeper than graves, rotations a blur of front to reserve, sleep's gift is fleeting, dawn's reveille a thief at the door, yet in this hush, it blooms brief, visions of Blighty's lanes, where gas lamps bloom and telegraphs sing of peace's rumor, the Kaiser's throne toppling in Parliament's jest. Fog thickens outside, veiling the wire in merciful white, no man's landed dreamer's canvas, craters smooth to meadows in the mind's soft forge. The salient exhales, howls calls defying the guns, a starling's trill hinting spring's defiance, the trench a cradle rocked by distant crumps that fade to thunder's memory. Tommy drifts deeper, the greatcoats at a pillow's throne, heart's rhythm slowing to the sump's eternal drip, survival's luck a lullaby gainst the cycle's turn. Dawn's gray fingers creep the horizon, fog's embrace loosening reluctant, the funkhole's hush a sanctuary brief gainst the renewal's call. Let the mud's dream enfold you, listener, straws yield a gentle sink, mate's breath's a soothing tide, drawing the night's vigil into boundless peace. As Tommy fades into the mist's forgiving hold, let the trench's rhythm lull you to, whispers of the salient carrying you to slumber's vast, untroubled sea. Word count, 599. Ambient fades to a profound hush, fog's hush deepens to silence, distant artillery a dream's faint echo, rain's patter dissolving into the sleeper's even breath. The day's cycle closes, trenches yielding to rest's eternal claim, loops soft for the night's embrace.